ownership perspective is, at the end of the day, it's a physical asset, a hotel, right? And each owner might have a vested interest, but there's a commonality amongst owners, which is my asset has a value tied to it, and it's tied to the real estate. It's tied to the business operating side of it, the hotel operations, and it's tied to the valuation of that property. What does it look like today? How much is it worth? And what's it going to look like in the future? And that could be next week, next year, 5 years when they exit, whatever it might be. So that ownership lens is always thinking from the perspective of, how is my management company, if I'm using one, how are they bringing value? How are they operating my asset to make it more valuable tomorrow than it is today? They're thinking about the lens of what's happening at the hotel to increase value from this moment moving forward. They're thinking about, if I'm happy with the way things are going at this hotel, how can I take this here and replicate it or duplicate it and do more hotels, right? And maybe I'm a one-off owner and I own 1, 2 handful of hotels now, but I'm looking to add to my portfolio. And so can I identify that I have a great operator there? We have a great location strategically. Can I replicate this, right? So this is one lens, if you will. The second lens, especially as we speak to innovation and technology, is that operator. And the operating side can be someone tied to that ownership group, like an owner-operator. It could be a third-party group, and we have many great ones here in the US that are, their specialty is running hotels. And sometimes it's the whole gamut from a small economy up through a resort. And some of them have specialties in just doing certain types of hotels, whether it be resorts alone or, traditional full service or select service hotels. But we have great operators, right? And so from this lens, it's very different sometimes than the owner, and very different on the other perspective, which I'll speak about, which is the team members and the people that are there rolling their sleeves up every day running the hotels. The management perspective is, I need to figure out the way that I can be the best operator, run the best business, run it as efficiently as possible, make sure I'm delivering the best guest experience every time someone comes through our doors, and make sure I'm upholding or appeasing to an ownership group that you might be managing on behalf of, perhaps a brand. So if there's a Hilton or Marriott or Hyatt tied to it, make sure I'm doing the right thing by them. Making sure that I'm pleasing my internal guests, which is my team members and employees that work for me. And lastly, but probably most importantly, is making sure I'm pleasing the guests that are coming through the doors every day, because they're the ones that keep the light on, right? They're the ones that are paying our bills. So this lens sort of pulls in all the ownership, all those other guests I talked about, both external and internal, and they have very much a vested interest to making sure they have the best technologies, the best innovations, that their perhaps old school processes are being improved so that they can tell the owner, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Owner, I'm running the best hotel I can for you. And your margins look great because I am forefront on technology, I am front and center on innovation, I hire the best people, I delight your guests, I'm keeping Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, IHG, all these brands, Sonesta, I'm keeping them at bay because they're happy. We're running a great hotel for you. So that is the lens, and that's a lens I know quite well. I spent a big chunk of my career doing just that, working in the operating third-party space. And then lastly, the third perspective, which I think is equally important and more often than not is a big influencer and decider in the technology and innovation, is the actual employees and team members that are using it. So if I use an example of our solution, or if I use the Rico solution as a whole, for example, the product itself is actually going to be used by those team members. The procurement solution is going to be used. Now, the decision maker to buy it may be the management company, or in some cases the owner, but the end user is going to be that team member, that person that's working in the kitchen or in housekeeping in the front desk. And it's important, I think it's very important, that when we think of innovation, much like Acro is like, the perspective needs to be who's actually going to be the one engaging with the customer who's taking advantage of the parking solution in this case, or the parking spot in this case, or who's going to be the one dealing with the procurement solution when they have to buy from a certain vendor. It's that team member, it's that employee. So even though we want to be hyper-focused sometimes with innovation on the management group or the owner in this case, they're all equally important. They all make up a significant chunk of this pie, right? Each one of them is influenced differently, but they're all very influential in this. And I think that for me, having that lens from each one of them, because I've been an employee, I've been in the management space, and I've been in the ownership side, gives me a unique sort of peripheral look in, if you will. The KPIs, if you will, for someone that's perhaps, managing the hotel or running the back of the house operations, obviously going to be a little different than a management company and owner, but very aligned in that if there's a technology or innovation that's going to help that person be more successful at their job, whether it's saving time, become more efficient, this is probably the biggest pain point that they want to have solved on a daily basis. Let's use the example of the restaurant manager, okay, or a supervisor at a restaurant. That individual only has a finite amount of hours to work each week. That individual also is like, how can I maximize my time to be the most efficient operator of my restaurant, whatever my outlet might be, perhaps it's a Starbucks. How can I manage my people as best as possible? And how do I appease my manager, who might be a corporate level at the management company or maybe a regional or a VP? How can I appease them as best as possible by showing them, the most profitable department, efficiency on staff and hours? So their interest and their KPIs, very important to them. It's what they live and breathe every day, but it has a direct correlation to what the management company wants to see happen, which is, how can I most effectively show an owner that I'm running his or her operation as best as possible? Secondary piece of that for the team member and staff is if this solution, whether it's a parking solution, whether it's an RMS for the hotel rooms, whether it's a procurement solution, if this is going to make my job better and make me look better and potentially help my pockets with an incentive plan, this is something I'm going to want to adopt immediately, and not only adopt and embrace it, but also have the rest of my team help them embrace this. So from that management lens, as I mentioned, the connectivity between those team members and the importance of that sort of KPI they have now leads into that management side, which is very interesting because when I think of the management world, they're always, I'm lumping management companies generally together, but for the most part, I would say pertains to the vast majority of larger management companies. They're looking for a competitive advantage, okay? And they all generally are going to have very similar KPIs. They're going to have KPIs like, what are my brand requirements for guest satisfaction, the NPS type scores? These are huge, right? Oftentimes owners are hiring management companies based on their reputation of delivering great results to keep the brands happy and at bay, right? Second thing is maybe it's a margin, a percentage of gross operating profit, or in the case of the owners, the NOI. And we'll certainly delve deeper into that. But how do you differentiate yourself from a management side to make sure that you're the company that's being chosen by owners? And I will tell you, one of the ways I think of, which leads me into a little bit about Accra, is like, if I'm a management company and I'm competing to get your business, Mr. or Mrs. Owner, I need something that's going to differentiate me, because I know I can get you those brand scores, I can get you your margins to where they need to be, and shoot, I could even say that I'm better at driving the NOI. But if I can bring something to the table, in this case, let's say I have an agreement with Accra for a parking arrangement, I can maximize a new revenue stream that perhaps that owner was never even thinking about before. And we'll certainly dive into why this is really important from a value perspective. But if I can be a management company that says, hey, I know of this technology, this innovation through Accra that allows me to, take those spots that were perhaps being just rented for $5 and now use an RMS solution and revenue manage those spots and create an incremental dollar amount, 100,000, whatever the dollar amount might be, and drive that through my processes as the management company, now I've just sort of separated myself from some of the competition that's out there, right? And this is a huge factor that management companies now are even taking into greater consideration when they think about, okay, yeah, we bring a tech stack to the table, if you will, but how are we differentiating ourselves from some of the competitors? Lastly, I would add is, as this correlates from that management side to the ownership group, as I alluded to in the last piece that we were speaking about, is very driven by the value of their assets. And it could be one hotel, it could be 50 hotels, whatever it is. If I'm Mr. or Mrs. Hotel owner and I'm looking for a management company to run my assets, I want the company that's going to deliver on all those KPIs I just discussed, but is also going to find ways for me to get incremental NOI, net operating income, because that's what they can take to the bank, right? So if they come to me and say, hey, I've got this parking solution that no one else has, or I'm the leader in this space, and I happen to have a lot of hotels as an owner that are by strategically by airports, by demand generating venues, cruise ports, whatever, concert venues, anywhere where there's an opportunity for me to capitalize on those parking spots. I'll go back to Accra as the reference. This is where there's value. And that value is well beyond just saying, hey, I'm going to collect some new income from it. Now it's tangible value in their asset. And this is speaking the language to owners above and beyond anything else. If Mr. Owner, your hotel is worth $40 million today, but you're hiring my management company by me doing all these things, achieving all these measurables that we put out, and also bringing new value through Accra and through other solutions, and perhaps through a better procurement solution, I've now created incrementally another $5 million in value. This is the language that an owner needs, especially in times like today when they're being squeezed, profitability is being squeezed because of rising expenses, and revenues are, some markets staying flat, some markets trending negatively. This language, if you speak this to the owners, this is what they want to hear, this is what they want to see, and this is where the differentiator, and again, it goes all the way back down that chain, if you will, to that team member that's really driving it through using the solution.